Black and Asian people should come here in hundreds of millions. We will come here, we have been coming here, and we will continue to come here in hundreds of millions until indeed Gaddafi said Europe will turn black.
It's been 1 year. 1 year since the flood of migrants pouring into Europe became a deluge. When German Chancellor Angela Merkel opened the gates to the continent and invited the entire developing world to come to the welfare states of Europe and live on government handouts. Millions of people, overwhelmingly young men from sub-Saharan Africa and the Arab world, have heeded the call. Once they arrived, they were welcomed at train stations by mostly women holding signs and squealing "Refugees welcome." In the midst of the euphoria, whilst Germans were celebrating their own benevolence and reports of mass sexual assault had yet to surface, you even had young girls visiting asylum centers with signs offering free hugs. The naivete was stupefying to behold. This euphoria of indulgent narcissistic virtue signaling and pathological altruism with a touch of self-flagellation is now meeting the cold reality of what it means to have imported millions of young men, mostly illiterate and skillless, to what was formerly a peaceful, high-trust modern society. And the social crisis currently marinating in the streets of Germany threatens the stability of all of Western Europe. My paternal grandmother was German, and I lived in Germany for a year in Frankfurt when I was at university. I very much liked its clean streets, safe U- and S-Bahns, and its very welcoming people. But in the big cities of Germany especially, those days are gone. Germany is in the midst of a transition, and like the frog that does not realize he is slowly being boiled, it's hard to know whether Germans will realize the country they built upon the ruins of defeat in World War II and the reunification of what was left of occupied East and West Germany will not survive this crisis, engineered and abetted by Chancellor Merkel, if left unchecked and unchallenged. At the beginning of this crisis, when Islamic terrorism was being waged in the name of Allah in the streets of Brussels, Paris, and Istanbul, Germans, knowing their chancellor had invited millions of military-age young men from the cauldrons of the Middle East and from the very heart of territory controlled by the Islamic State, they knew very well that their time was coming. By wide margins, the German public had resigned itself that their country would also suffer violent jihadist attacks in 2016. And they were right. Jihadists' attacks across the continent are now becoming normalized, as they are in Germany, which has suffered multiple such attacks in the first half of 2016. However, Mother Merkel, as she is known to the millions of migrants that have arrived, as well as the millions of others around the world that hope to enter the EU, denies the reality that is staring her in the face. It doesn't matter how many times Islamic terrorists squeal Allahu Akbar before they unleash their violence upon unbelievers, Angela Merkel steadfastly denies that migrants have brought either violence, crime, or jihad to Germany. In fact, it is thought crimes, as well as the crime of having an opinion that differs from the state-sanctioned speech codes that her government and German authorities have concerned themselves with. Not only are they arresting people for their opinions on social media, they will arrest and prosecute anyone, no matter the circumstances, for objecting to the behavior and crimes of migrants and New Germans. During the mass shooting in Munich on the 22nd of July 2016 that took the lives of 9 people and wounded 36 others, Thomas Salby, a 57-year-old German man, hurled abuse at the shooter, Ali Sonboli, from his balcony, while many praised Mr. Salbe for standing up to the gunman who aimed shots in his direction. He was charged by the Munich prosecutor for libel for his comments. During the deadly attack, he repeatedly called the gunman a wanker and told him to fuck off. All I had was a beer bottle to throw at him, but if I had a gun, I would have shot him in the head, the Munich resident said. German prosecutors are investigating Salbe for potentially insulting the 18-year-old gunman who shot himself after the massacre, and he will most likely have to pay a fine. In the first 3 months of 2016, migrants were reported to have committed roughly 70,000 crimes in Germany. In fact, The crime rates are grossly disproportionate as a percentage of population. However, the German establishment not only sought to cover up their crimes, German police have now been accused of surrendering in the face of migrant crime. Documents show officers in Kiel, northern Germany, were told to forego prosecuting migrants for theft and criminal damage amid fears there was little chance of succeeding. It's not only because of the vast numbers of cases that police were told that there would be little chance of successful prosecution. The real reason being was that most had no identification. Think about that. Crime was being allowed to take place because the German authorities have no idea who it is that is in their country, and thus gave non-Germans carte blanche to commit crimes with no repercussions. And these orders were given just 2 months before Cologne. So what you have now is one rule for natives and one rule for migrants. And the migrants know it. Cologne was the first instance of mass sexual assault reported in Germany. Actually, it was not exactly reported, as the government tried to suppress the information, but was pushed out into the open by the women who, via protesting in the streets, forced the issue. Even though 1,200 German women were sexually assaulted by 2,000 men, many German women of Cologne, once the story broke, took to the streets to hand out flowers to the young migrant men of the city to show their solidarity with them. And no matter how hard the authorities attempt to cover up the sexual assaults committed by migrants against German women and children, the situation is spiraling out of control and shows no signs of abating. There's now even an interactive crime map that is set up to detail the rape wave that is now slamming into Germany, and the pins that locate the sexual assaults against German women are multiplying by the day. I've gone into detail in another video about the horrifying new trend of Taharush, or the Arabic rape game, that is now descending upon women of Germany, where they are surrounded by large groups of migrant men and violently violated and sexually assaulted. As well, I've made a dedicated video on the new phenomena of migrants and their sexual emergencies, whereas women and especially children are now en masse being the victims of sexual assault in the swimming pools around Europe, but especially in Germany. And like Sweden, which has become the rape capital of Europe, and this summer introduced "Don't Rape Me" bracelets in an attempt to curb migrant sex attacks upon Swedish women at summer outdoor concerts, the German authorities have come up with an equally useless stopgap measure to help reduce migrant sexual assaults in German swimming pools. Young girls at German swimming pools are now being given temporary tattoos with the word "no" on them in the attempt to put off rapists. The stick-on messages say no in German and English, but strangely not in Arabic. And officials hope they will lead to a fall in sexual assaults at public baths. The overall safety of women and children has become a very real problem in Germany and looks to only worsen as time goes by. Retired Syrian professor Bassam Tibi of Göttingen University, and with fellowships at Princeton, Berkeley, Harvard, and Yale, has said the mass sex attacks in Cologne were the result of the migrants' value system. A value system that is incompatible with modernity, and that they are furious at not being given a luxury lifestyle, and they intend to humiliate Germans. The professor revealed that Arabs believe themselves to be honorable and that Germans are not, as German women are allowed to sleep with everyone. The decorated academic said that police's fear of the racist accusation is greater than their fear of the decline of public order. This, he contends, leads migrants to view German police as wimps. The political scientist noted that taxpayers are providing migrants with far more than they could expect even with wages in their homelands, but warned they find the hospitality insufficient. He asserted that Arab migrants see slut German women as fair game for assault, and warned that the country is set to see big social conflicts as a result of Angela Merkel and EU open border policies. Professor Tibi argued that sexual assaults on German women are driven by vengeance for not being given nice cars and flats. He also pointed to Syrian culture playing a part. If such men do not get what they expect, they are angry. In the culture I come from, You want to humiliate people who make you mad. In the Orient, to humiliate a man, one rapes his wife. My guess is that these young Muslim men wanted in Cologne to humiliate the women, and behind this humiliation is the humiliation of the German man. The woman is an instrument for it. Syria and Russia have been blamed by the mainstream media for the weaponization of migrants in Europe. However, it is Recep Erdogan, the president of Turkey, that has threatened to unleash millions from around the Muslim world upon Europe should his government not be given billions of euros as well as visa-free travel within the Schengen zone. He holds the Islamic migrants like a dagger to the throat of Europe, while his fellow countrymen, now into their third generation in Germany, are being pleaded with by Chancellor Merkel to show even an inkling of loyalty to the country that has taken them in. Many have little loyalty to their host country, and Ms. Merkel's government is nervous of the tensions in Turkey spilling over into Germany. Welt newspaper this week published allegations that Turkish intelligence operates a larger network of informers in Western Germany than the East German Stasi had, and uses it to intimidate ethnic Turks who oppose Erdogan's regime. Europeans have long ridiculed countries such as the US for their societal take on the role of police and that of self-defense. The police in the US long ago, if they ever had, lost their monopoly on violence and are mostly there to mop up the mess once it has already occurred. Europeans for generations have not been allowed to protect themselves, and because of the former homogeneous nature of their societies, there was little need to do so. However, the migrant rape wave currently assaulting Europe has no boundaries, and people, especially women, have begun to take matters into their own hands. In Denmark, pepper spray, which is strictly illegal, was used by a 17-year-old girl to fend off a rapist near an asylum seeker center. The girl, who was forced to the ground by the man who tried to remove her clothes, is being charged for using pepper spray against her intended rapist. The reason she is being charged is that she used the illegal substance to protect herself from rape. In Austria, shotguns have been sold out and firearm sales are up by 350%. Sales are also surging in non-lethal weapons such as tasers, pepper spray, and blank firing guns amid unease of the crime and rape the migrants have brought with them. In Switzerland, the importation of jihad and criminality to the continent has triggered a run on guns, with all 26 cantons showing year-on-year increases in the application for firearms ownership. In the Czech Republic, the number of gun permit holders grew to nearly 300,000 in the first 5 months of 2016. In Germany, the population is not allowed to protect themselves from the violent crime and jihad that Angela Merkel has foisted upon her nation. Thus, pepper spray has been in great demand, as have blank firing or starter pistols since the beginning of the migrant influx. In fact, there is such a demand for self-defense weapons in Germany that pepper spray is now being sold by the largest German drugstore, DM. Citing growing demand, pepper spray is being added to their normal product line of non-prescription medicine, cosmetics, and household products. There are now even calls by the fastest growing party in Germany, the right-wing Alternative for Germany, to legalize gun ownership in the country because, as they say, the government has lost its state monopoly to protect its citizens, especially in thinly populated areas. This is Germany after 1 year of the migrant crisis that was encouraged and escalated by Chancellor Angela Merkel, and she has refused to change course. And now that Chancellor Merkel's invitation that all the world is welcome and that there is no upper limit to the number of young men that Germany can absorb, new sources of migrants have appeared this year. The southern migratory route may be closed, but the eastern one is open. Germany's border with Poland is now seeing massive inflows of men from Chechnya, a Muslim republic where separatists have fought several bloody wars against Russia. This new influx of migrants is largely going unreported in the mainstream media, and this is understandable as the police have strangely been very candid in the belief that even more Islamic militants are arriving, as well as their total inability to vet this newly arriving population. Merkel has divided Europe and has even been blamed for contributing to the UK's population's desire to leave the EU through Brexit. Moreover, with the discord she has sown, the breakup of the EU over her failed migrant policy is now not an impossibility. But how many rapes are too many rapes? How many crimes against persons and property is too many? How many people need to be killed in jihadist terror attacks? How much money can be spent on maintaining this army of young and essentially unemployable men? Surely it has been shown that Germans will tolerate the crime, the jihad, the costs, and the raping of their women and children. But when is it too much or too many? Germans have been indoctrinated for over 70 years of their collective guilt with regards to the Second World War. The minuscule numbers of Germans that were actually held responsible by the victors of the war have long since perished. Today, most Germans are more frightened to be called neo-Nazi or racist than they are to have their children or wives gang raped, their country pillaged, and their very lives given up on the altar of tolerance and diversity. Having watched this year-old crisis go from vapid platitudes and childish naivete to the authorities now considering the introduction of the military to patrol the streets of Germany, has been breathtaking in its escalation and would be comedic if the stupidity of the virtue-signaling political class in concert with a large segment of the zombified population was not so destructive. The next 5 years will either seal Germany's and with it much of the rest of Western Europe's fate, or there will be a rebirth in pride and a demand for the continued existence of Germany as a German nation, and for Europe's culture to remain Western in character. Which will it be is hard to tell, but one thing is certain. It will get much worse before it gets better, or before Germany is no longer German. Please consider subscribing to this channel. It will be updated regularly.